Stephen A. from New York, pull out the tea leaves. How do you interpret what the new GM said?
Well, what I interpret it as is that, you know what, considering the advent of quarterbacks like a Russell Wilson, a Colin Kaepernick, and RG3, one of the things that all three of them had in common is that they won football games. Despite the incredible athleticism and the individual talent that Cam Newton may possess, the reality is he's 13 and 19 as a starter for the Carolina Panthers. Yes, he led the team in rushing last year. Yes, he threw 176 straight passes without an interception, really cut down on turnovers and protecting the football. There's a lot to be said for that. But at the same time, when you consider the way their defense improved, they leaped by about 18 slots defensively last season. The question about this team obviously is offense, and if there's a question about the offense, it has to evolve around Cam Newton. You've got D'Angelo Williams, you've got Jonathan Stewart, you even got a short yardage specialist in Mike Tolbert, you know, in your backfield, coming out of your backfield, so you're perceived to be solid from the running back position. Steve Smith may be 34 years of age, but he had another 1,000-yard receiving season last year, and he's big time. This kid LaFell is clearly the #2 receiver. We got to see what he's capable of doing. There's no doubt about that. And obviously in Greg Olsen, you have the second most reliable pass catcher for Cam Newton at the tight end spot. You have pieces in place to be effective. You have pieces in place to start off better than 1-5. And so if you are the Carolina Panthers hierarchy, you're looking at some of the elements, the pieces that you have in place on both sides of the ball, and you're saying to yourself, particularly since you ended the season winning 5 of your last 6 games, so you could finish 7-9, we have the pieces in place to get something done, to do something, to at least make a run at the playoffs, if not get into the playoffs, to at the very least have a winning record and to show progress, especially with Rivera, the head coach's job being on the line. He doesn't get it done this year. I mean, listen, we know he's gone. It took Richardson, the owner, about 6 days after the season was over to announce that he was keeping Rivera on. So he's on the hot seat. The defense is potentially stout. You've got pieces on the offensive side of the ball. It comes down to Cam Newton. And the new GM was saying it comes down to Cam Newton. He's got to step up and get it done. We know he's got the skills and the talent, but he's got to get it done.
So gut feeling, Stephen A. Smith, by year's end, does the new GM decide that he is sold long-term on Cam Newton?
I think so, because I think Cam Newton is too much of a big-time talent to give up on. He's entering his 3rd season. I'm not giving up on him. I believe that the upside is tremendous. I don't like some of the pouting, but that's about it. I think that the upside is tremendous, and I think Cam Newton's going to show out this year, even though he's got a new offensive coordinator.
He sure does, Mike Shula. Not sure that's a big upgrade over Rob Chudzinski, who's now, of course, the head coach at Cleveland.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. That's my question mark.
My takeaway from yesterday was I was shocked by the response of the new GM to the player we have perceived as the face of this franchise going forward. I thought he said it all, this Gettleman did, without saying a single word for 7 endless seconds after the question was asked of him. So Stephen A., he's basically, without saying a word, saying, I have not seen enough. And again, I'm starting to speak for him here, but as you point out, enough maturity, enough leadership. We've seen the bad body language, the towel over his head, as we've seen on the sideline. We've seen the Superman celebration when they're down a couple touchdowns. I forget when it was. I think it was to your Giants on that Thursday night. We've seen that a couple times. Just, these are maturity issues. And I've said it before, Stephen A. I thought, in a way, the worst thing that Cam could have done was to start off his NFL career with 432 and 422 yards passing. Remember those first 2 games? Both of them losses. One on the road at Arizona, one to a really good, as you well know, Green Bay team at home. After that, his rookie year, I kept trying to bring some perspective to it and point out he had, after that, only 1 more game over 300 yards. And then in the final 12 games, everything was in the 200 range. And then last year, very quietly at the end of the year, they actually won 4 straight games. Atlanta, at San Diego, Oakland, and at New Orleans. They won all 4 games, but Cam didn't throw for over 300 yards in any one of those games. He did rush for 116 at home against Atlanta, which was a big help. My point is, that's the Cam who can win football games, not the 400-yard Cam, the 250-yard Cam. Not making mistakes. Those last 4, he had 9 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. That's the great Cam, using his legs occasionally when need be, that can win football games going forward. But the new GM's saying he just got to win. You pointed out all the pieces that are in place. I like all their pieces. I like their stable of running backs. They added Kenyon Barner to that. It's pretty good. Okay, now it falls on the face of franchise. Mr. Newton, you're on. I think your GM just put you on notice for this year. You're on this clock. Starting off, and we're about to talk about the Seahawks. By the way, they open at home against those Seattle Seahawks. Here we go. You got to do it. Got to win games.
Let's put it in perspective. When he says he's on a hot seat, it's not like, oh my goodness, if Cam Newton doesn't get it done this year, he's going to be traded. Let's put it in perspective. What he's doing is highlighting the responsibility and the onus that's going to be placed on the shoulders of Cam Newton. You don't get to just sit there and look at the team and say the team is so-so, we got to do X, Y, and Z, and act as if you're somewhat absolved from guilt, blame, etc. No, you're the face of the franchise. You're the quarterback. We believe we have the requisite pieces around you for you to be better than what you have been. So I'm putting the spotlight on you. It's not like I'm worried about Cam Newton getting traded. I'm just saying that based on what the GM said, he's essentially saying that if we falter this year, we're going to step aside and let this dude handle this hot seat. He's not getting a pass because he no longer has his rookie year or just being a second-year player to hide behind. Not when Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, and RG3 have stepped onto the scene as youngsters, younger than Cam Newton, who have handled their business. He's not getting that pass anymore. That's what I interpreted as the GM saying.
Okay, I hear you. I do believe in Cam. I stand by what I said before he was drafted. Wasn't completely sold on his accuracy or his maturity at Auburn. But I am sold on the talent, and I think this could be if I can in a third year, I think this could be a breakthrough kind of year for Cam Newton. I also think it must be that kind of year. You say, well, he's not going to be traded. I don't know what would happen if they have a long, hard year and he struggles with his maturity and handling losing, or if they just lose games and he doesn't come up big in fourth quarters, which we've seen before. I don't know, Stephen A. They might look under a new GM to go in a new direction. I'm not sure about that. I think this is a pivotal year
for him
in Cam Newton's career.